Welcome to the Untied Podcast, where we unravel the knots of life with faith, wisdom, and encouragement, because together we're here to untie from tradition and embrace truth through powerful Bible teaching. We're so thankful that you have joined us today. My name is Garrett Bernethi, and I am one of your hosts of this show, along with Corey Sawyers and Tyler King. And we're thankful that you've joined us today for another episode of the Untied Podcast. Today we've got a great episode in store for you, where we have another great friend of ours that's going to join us here at the end of the podcast, and we're going to do another weekly ministry spotlight on him and the great work that he and his lovely wife are doing, and just have some good conversation with him and share with you some of the good things that are going on with that work. And before we get to that, we actually have a little bit different of an episode today. Typically, we have had a topic or a theme that we have discussed and talked about, and today we wanted to dive into something different. We've kind of talked about maybe once or twice every season doing something a little bit different, that we're typically looking at a book of the Bible, and we're calling this a big picture episode. And today we're going to be looking at the book of Daniel. And I'm really excited to dive into that book with two of my good friends. And so before we hop into that, looking at Daniel itself, I want to, guys, how are you doing today, and what's going on in your life and all that good stuff?
Oh, things are going good. Staying busy, of course. We had the college kids over for our home study last night, and so still trying to recover from a late night from that, but it's been great. Lots of good stuff in Screw Tape Letters, man. I tell you, I sometimes forget how wordy C.S. Lewis is in that book, and so I keep apologizing to the college students. Sorry if you don't understand this. Sometimes it's easier to understand the New King or the King James Bible than sometimes what C.S. Lewis is writing. But staying busy, doing good. Just kind of something on the side. I'm always looking for a project that I can bring home, put in the garage, fix up, and resell. But lately I've been trying to convince Natalie there's a thing called a Polaris slingshot. So Polaris makes a lot of UTVs and side-by-sides and snowmobiles. Well, and I think it was in 2015, they came out with what they called a slingshot, which is an auto cycle. So it's got one wheel in the back, two wheels in the front, and it's a two-seater, 5-speed manual transmission. It's got a Chevy 2-liter 4-banger in the front, and they're pretty fun, pretty quick little cars. And I said, Natalie, think about this. If I buy this, I could just rent it out per day, and then whenever it's not rented out, I could drive it to work. I don't know how the members of North Mac would look at me if I showed up in that thing, though. It looks like a little miniature Batmobile, but
hey, I'll tell you, being in a small town, everybody has stuff like that, so that'd be right up my alley.
Yeah. And I said, I'd print off a little sticker that said "rent me" on the side of it, and I'd just drive it around town, free advertising. And she hasn't said no, but she also hasn't said yes. So we'll see.
The silence is deafening.
Yeah.
Corey, what's going on with you? You just got back from traveling. So tell us how of course, a couple of weeks ago we did a weekly ministry spotlight on the Linder Road congregation and their meeting that they did up there, their lectureship, and you spoke at that. How did everything go up there?
It went really well. I told y'all 2 weeks ago, it's one of my favorite weekends of the year. It's just such a great lectureship, and there's such a sweet spirit up there, and we just love them so much. All of their ministers, Clint and Jared and Richard, do such a great job, and just a loving and warm, hospitable congregation, and had a great lineup of speakers. The present company excluded, all of the guys there were just phenomenal preachers, and we had the theme of it was grace, and I don't know who it was, but one of the guys, after about halfway through it may have been Tim Lewis, actually, I think, that said it, but something to the effect of, what a great series of lessons. I mean, it's not like you can ever say, hey, that's too much preaching on grace. I'm kind of tired of that. So it was really good, and got to spend time with John Moore, who we had on last week, and Hadn't seen him in the flesh in a while, and that was good. And so anyway, it was just a great week. But I was thinking about your little mini Batmobile. That's what I was thinking when you were. That's what I've always thought they look like, is a miniature Batmobile. And of course, the congregation up there, they put us up in a hotel and they rent a car for us. Last year, I got to talking to the guy at the counter and I talked him into an upgrade. But this year, I couldn't talk the guy into an upgrade. So we got the standard sedan. And I've got a 2007 pickup truck. My wife has a 2017 Expedition. So we're used to riding up. And when we first got married, she had a Toyota Camry. That's what we had for this weekend. And those are nice little cars. They ride well. They drive well. But after about, I don't know, 3 trips back and forth, I told Melody, I said, I think I'm too old to ride in a car anymore, because I felt like I was kind of like the Duke boys sliding into the window just to get it. You know, my papa had a car when he was my age, but it was like a 64 Cadillac. And it was like you put a garage door on the side of a body of a car and there was a full couch, you know, and I mean, it was easy to, but man, sliding into that. And I finally got to the point that I would sit down and then turn like I was, you know, like the little old ladies I used to carry out groceries for when I was in high school. So anyway, I'm at that point in life, evidently. So,
well, I remember when I started working at the electric company a long time ago, Kristen and I got married in 2005, and I was reading meters, and so I had a 97 F-150 4x4, gas guzzling machine, and she had a little Kia. And whenever I got in that Kia, it was like a go-kart, and it was a stick shift. To be honest, I loved driving the thing because it just wrapped around you and you could just really go crazy with it. So I actually took that all the time to go read meters, and I'd be going around corners like I'm on a go-kart going to read different meters. It was actually a lot of fun, and it got like 50 miles a gallon. So that was a very cool thing. But my wife today would not be driving it. She would not want to drive. She has a bigger vehicle now too, and she likes to sit up where she feels a little bit more comfortable. So it's different. Back then you really didn't care, but nowadays it's like to be something a little higher.
I'm not as flexible as I used to be, I found out. So
ain't that the truth?
Well, you guys are not encouraging me at all, because my daily driver right now, I mean, I've got a truck, but I've got a 2012 Mustang that I drive back and forth to work, and gets great gas mileage. It's cheap on insurance, surprisingly easy to fix. It's got a Ford motor in it. I mean, it's pretty practical outside of not having back seats. But Tim Lewis, and it's even funnier if you know Tim, but Tim Lewis got in it one day with lunch, and he looked down at the gear shifter. It's a 6-speed manual. And as soon as he looks down, he goes, "Yeah, my kids don't know what that is." Manual shift.
I've seen those called a millennial auto theft device, you know. So
yeah, that was one of the first.
But I asked Melody, to your point, Garrett. I asked Melody. I said, "Well, does this bring back memories you want in your old Camry back?" And she said, "No, I feel like I'm dragging on the ground." And I said, "Yes." So
not something you want anymore.
I think we're past the car stage. I told her, I said it would be bad if we had a Camry, and then I said, or it would be really good because it might make me maybe get stretched back into shape. I don't know, but anyway,
I will always have a truck as long as I'm able to have a pickup. I will have a pickup, and I've got a 3/4 ton Ford, and I love it, and does everything I want. But I gotta be honest. Some of these Jeeps I would love to have just to play around in, and even the Jeep trucks have kind of grown on me a little bit. If you do some stuff to them, at first I didn't like them at all, but there's some of like yesterday we went to a basketball game for our youngest, and there was a pretty neat Rubicon red one all decked out, and I thought, man, I could drive that around, kind of a little daily driver and keep some miles off of my pickup, but.
Well, Tyler knows I'm old-fashioned. I like the Jeep trucks because they look like an old-timey truck to me.
They do, somewhat, yeah.
So,
Yeah, we've got one of our friends' dads. He actually has a couple of them, and they love him. He's a huge Jeep guy. He's got all kinds of Jeeps. He's got several '60s models Jeeps. He's got a few '70s and '80s and new ones. He's just kind of a collector, so they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool.
How did the barbecue turn out, Tyler?
I thought it was good. It's crazy. I've done a few of those pork shoulders before. I did 2 of them. One was 8 pounds. The other one was 10 pounds. So plenty of food. I put it in at 9 p.m. I slept on the couch and just kind of babied it throughout the night. Woke up at 6:30 in the morning. I was just kind of waking up about every 2 hours just to check in on it. And I thought, wow, these are going to be done way earlier than I thought. Well, of course, you have the pork shoulder stall at 160.
Mm-hmm.
And the smaller one hit the stall, and it was done about 2 hours after that. It reached 205. But man, that 10 pound, which 10 pounds is not big for a pork shoulder. I've done bigger than that. It went total for 18 hours. It was from 9 o'clock to about 3 o'clock is when I pulled it out and then wrapped it and let it sit for about 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought, good grief, 18 hours for a 10-pound pork shoulder? That's wild.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they all just differ. So that's why you always cook it before and make sure that you got plenty of time. Otherwise, you're having to scramble and throw it in the oven and crank it up to 450 or 500 and letting it cook that way. Nope.
For those of you who this may be your first time tuning in with us, I can't remember if it was last episode or the episode before. We all like to we all have smokers and smoke meat and stuff. And if you need to go to Tyler's Facebook page, and he's got a picture he posted of getting ready, and he's got all this stuff in his smoker, and looked like a pretty neat setup. But I'll tell you one thing. I don't know if you guys have done this, and we'll probably need to get into our actual study here in a minute. But have you guys ever done party ribs? You ever smoked any of those?
What's party ribs?
They call them party ribs. Basically, you're cutting the ribs before instead of putting them on as the whole slab.
Huh.
The only reason I tried it was because I'd seen some YouTube videos of some guys doing it, and I've heard some other guys that have done it, and they like them. And so we didn't have a whole lot of time one evening, and we had 2 slabs of ribs, and my wife was like, "Didn't you talk about those party ribs?" And yeah, I did. And she said, "Well, why don't we just try those?" So I got on there and I looked at some stuff and kind of saw if people were doing them. It only takes an hour and a half. You cut them up at the beginning, put your rub, whatever seasoning you like, and then throw them on the smoker at about 175 to 195. And then leave them on there for an hour, 50 minutes to an hour. They're going to be about 160, 150 internal. And then I put together whatever barbecue sauce you like, brown sugar. I put a little bit of Worcestershire sauce in there. If you like a little bit of spice, you can put that in there. Whatever you want, just kind of whatever your sauce concoction is. And then go out there and then just, kind of baste them. And every 15 minutes, I generally do it three times before I take them off, but go out there, baste them. And, once they reach really about 185, because they're just individuals, 185 internal, they're about ready to go. Take them off, and that sauce and everything's just really caramelized on there, and they're pretty good. They're not as, I wouldn't say they're as juicy or whatever as if you have like a full slab, but they're
for a
good.
quick little, you get home, put them on the smoker, and you're good for dinner. That's not bad.
Yeah.
They cook fairly quickly, and don't matter how many you put on there, So you ought to give it a shot. So
yeah. Hey, I've got a friend that likes to smoke ribs, and then he will he'll once they're done, he'll let them rest, and he'll cut them apart, and he will mix up like some cornbread mix. Mm-hmm. He'll dip them in that and deep fry them like you're making corn dogs, but it's rib with the and dude, that's pretty phenomenal.
I'm tempted.
Yep,
that sounds.
This weekend this weekend I'm smoking a breakfast casserole that Tyler inspired me to do. So.
Oh.
Oh, you have to tell me how that turns out.
Yeah.
You never did yours?
I never did it. Nope.
No.
You're
I'm
gonna
gonna try it.
out.
It may
You're gonna have to give us
it
an
may
update.
it may be a fail, but I'm gonna try it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean,
Something
only
else I like
stands
to
to
do is-
reason. Anything smoked is going to be better.
I do. I like to do smoked sausage balls. Put a little jalapeno cream cheese in there.
Yeah.
Really good. And then anything jalapeno, I'm all about. But smoked
Yeah.
sausage balls, I've got a little recipe that I've got, and man, it's good. Just add a little bit of that smoky flavor. I haven't eaten lunch yet. I'm starving. Okay, let's get
Now we're untied from indoor cooking.
untied
So-
from indoor cooking. Yeah. So you're gonna have to give us an update next week how that breakfast went.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good. Well, guys, we've got a great show for you. This is season 1, episode 5, and as we said earlier, we've got a little bit different. Trying to do something a little bit different, and we're going to go ahead and probably, guys, skip ahead to our segment 3, which is going to be our big picture to talk about Daniel. There's just a lot to talk about here. We're not going to go really, really deep. There's just so much material here, but definitely wanted to talk about the big picture of Daniel and kind of how it applies to our lives as individuals and help us to grow. I think that, the main reason when we first decided to do something like this was to help people grow in their knowledge of Scripture, and that's kind of what this episode is dedicated to within the book of Daniel. So where do we want to start? We talked about doing an overview. If we're thinking about where we are within the story itself, I think that I like to call there are books in your Bible that I like to call storyline books. They actually carry the story along, if you will. So you actually start with, of course, Genesis and Exodus, and then you jump to Numbers, and then you would jump to the book what could be called the books of the Kings, which is 1st and 2nd Samuel. And then the kingdoms, which is 1st and 2nd Kings. But then we actually jump forward to the book of Daniel. And the reason that you jump forward to the book of Daniel is simply because in 2 Kings 24, that's where King Nebuchadnezzar comes in and destroys Jerusalem and takes the southern kingdom into Babylonian captivity. And so that is kind of where the story is up until this point. And of course, after the book of Daniel, we have Ezra and Nehemiah as they go back to Jerusalem. And then basically the storyline actually carries to the Gospel of Luke, then the book of Acts. And then we go to, of course, Revelation, if you were wanting to end it with that. And so as far as where history goes and where everything is, we're looking at, in the book of Daniel, a time where we're in Babylonian captivity. In fact, in Daniel chapter 1, that's where we pick up in the 3rd year of King Jehoiakim, which it comes back from 2 Kings chapter 24. And so that's kind of timeline where King Nebuchadnezzar, who's the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. So that's kind of where we are within the story, if you will, of the Bible. And now we're gonna, now let's go into the overview of some of the things that we would like to share as far as the important topics, a theme, kind of a survey, whatever we'd like to do here. But guys, what are as we do an overview of this Bible, what are some important things that we can take? I realize that our listeners, our viewers probably have not read Daniel recently. Maybe they have. But if we were to start somewhere as far as an overview, what are some things that we want to just pick up real quick and begin to run with as we start to give a little bit of information and meaning to this writing itself?
Well, I'll let Tyler get into actual Daniel itself, but before he does, the things I would like to encourage, and we've talked about this before, but encourage our listeners to think of books in what we're doing today in the big picture kind of sense of like the book in its totality. We really are bad about, just dropping in, pulling out a verse or two here or there and, piecing a string of scriptures together to build a theology that we want to build. And we may or may not be teaching truth or error, but you don't know because you're not using that verse in the way that it was originally intended to. So I think studies like this are really important for us to do before, you start looking at Daniel 2 and seeing what that's about, or, going to Daniel 6 and talking about the lion's den or whatever. It's important for us to see big picture kind of stuff before we get into see the forest before you start examining the trees.
Right.
Yeah, and especially when you think about the larger forest at hand, the Old Testament, I feel a lot of people, myself included, can kind of get lost in terms of, we as Western thinkers are very chronological in nature. We love to have things in order, and the Old Testament is not in order. The Jews, whenever they constructed it and decided which ones were going to be canon, and I think that there was even divine inspiration in the gathering of those books and solidifying them. They were going basically from topic to topic. And so the Old Testament, in Jewish culture and even Hebrew language, you have what's called the Tanakh, the Torah, the Navim and Ketuvim, which is, you have the wisdom, basically, or the writings, and then the prophets. So Torah, law, writings, which are going to be more historical books, and then prophets. And that's how they viewed the Old Testament. And so when we come in it at 2024, and we're thinking, wow, what in the world is this mess of 39 books? You have to really think in big picture. And so, Garrett, you did a really good job kind of, okay, here we are in captivity. And this is probably one of the biggest events that would happen to the Jewish people. You've got two pieces of God's people who are divided. Basically, a civil war has happened after Solomon died. His sons wage war against each other. You've got Israel to the north and Judah to the south. Both failed to acknowledge God, and both really did a terrible job being faithful to God. And so God is going to send two armies particularly to come in and kind of hold these guys captive. So in 722 BC, Israel gets subjected to the forces of Assyria. Assyria comes in and just wipes the floor with Israel. And then about 20 years later, Judah apparently didn't get the warning shot that God kind of fired off and told the people to get right. And around 701, 700, Assyria comes in and they take Judah too. Well, then here's this mighty force from the east, Babylon, and they come in and they make Assyria look like, child's play. So Babylon comes in and basically dominates both of them. And so Daniel, as a Jewish boy, has been kind of held subjective to, you think about, if your parents and grandparents have been in this captivity and you're trying your best to be a Jew, a lot of things are out of sorts. You're kind of uncomfortable. You are now being raised in a normal society of captivity and slavery, especially Daniel being pulled away from maybe some of the things, some of the very few things that would have been comforting and common, or at least well known to him. And now he's just thrown into this whole mix of, you're not going to be called Daniel anymore. Well, that's our English interpretation. You're not going to be called Daniel anymore. You're going to be called, what is it? Belshazzar, or
Belshazzar.
not
Belshazzar.
Yeah. And you have
that's
all
why
of
we
these...
said in Tennessee and Babylon have a little bit different pronunciations on things, but
yeah. You're going to have a new name. You're going to speak a new language. You're going to have a new culture. You're going to have new friends. You're going to be around new people. I mean, everything is new to Daniel. I taught this to the college class, and basically the approach was, we've got to be okay with unfamiliarities. There are going to be a lot of things in this life that change, and how Daniel handles that change is just absolutely phenomenal. I mean,
right,
inspirational to say the very least.
Yeah.
Whenever I taught this book to, I was joking with Garrett earlier before Corey got on. I taught this book in the Philippines last May. Not the Philippians, but the Filipinos. A little bit of a syllable change there. But we looked at Daniel chapter 1 as being the man of Daniel. Daniel chapters 2 through 6 being the ministry of Daniel, and then 7 through 12 being the message of Daniel. So chapter 1 really gets you familiar with who is Daniel? Who is this guy that's going to be dealt with all of these unfamiliarities? Who is he in terms of being a man of God? If you look in Daniel chapter 1, it says that he resolved himself that he was not going to defile himself with the king's food. This is one who was going to stay faithful to God no matter what. And then what does that man look like once he's in ministry? Dealing with the most powerful person in the world at the time, Nebuchadnezzar, dealing with contemporaries and dealing with people who would rise up against him. That's 2 through 6. And then what's the point of all of this? Is it just for God to show Nebuchadnezzar or Darius or anyone else, oh yeah, here's my servant Daniel? Well, 7 through 12 really gets into the meat of that in terms of there is no kingdom like God's kingdom. And Daniel is just one little instance of showing that God is the one in control. God is going to be the one who is going to be king no matter what, especially eternally. And so that's kind of the approach, big picture, that I had kind of seen when studying Daniel is there's no kingdom like God's kingdom. And I think that just astronomical amounts of encouragement in that. Two key verses, and then I'll shut up and stop talking, but two key verses that I think that are absolutely imperative. And I think a lot of Daniel can be centered around Daniel chapter 2, 2:20 and 21. God is the one who is going to remove kings. God is going to be the one who sets up kings. So maybe the election doesn't go our way. Listen, that's not our time to rise up and revolt. That's our time to say things are about to get very unfamiliar. Things are going to go in a different direction than what we want, but yet we can still be faithful to God. And then Daniel chapter 2, what I believe is just paramount in the Old Testament, 44 through 47. This kingdom that we are in with God, not America, but this kingdom that we are in with God, it will never be handed over to another people. It will never be destroyed. In fact, the only thing that you can take from this life to the next life are those around you. Everything else is going to be burned up and destroyed and gone. But the kingdom that we are in right now, again, it's different. It's unique. And I think Daniel recognized that. I'm confident Daniel recognized that. And that's why, man, I don't know. I would not be the first one to go toe-to-toe with Nebuchadnezzar. You think about what kind of crazy guy this is who just wrecked Assyria, and he's on this, power high. And he's obviously built up Babylon to be something pretty spectacular. If you read any history book about Babylon, it was something to behold. To think about, you're going toe-to-toe with this guy. And I think, the way that Daniel could is, A, God was working through him, and B, he realized, I don't care. You kill me. I'm just going to the eternal kingdom. I'm already there. I'm not going to fear you. So Daniel didn't have fear. And man, the political success that Daniel had was pretty amazing. So, all right, I'll stop talking now.
Well, I love what you said, because everything, this is a great place to think about the right kind of mindset that each of us ought to have, right? I mean, because not only, of course, did Daniel come into this place, have his name changed, but also 3 of his friends came in and they had their name changed, and they also went through, a pretty good ordeal with Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and they're also equally asked, to bow down to this great statue and to give their allegiance to somebody else other than God, and there's really a very right perspective, I think, that comes from these 4 individuals, especially Daniel, and that is their understanding of the things that are eternal, right? And I think that's kind of one of the key themes, if you will, of the book itself. I've got written down in some of my notes that throughout the book, one of the keys to helping us understand is the idea of everlasting. Mm-hmm. There is a key component to the book of Daniel that is about time. And one thing I think is very telling, I was thinking about this last night actually, when you look at the 4 different kingdoms that are referenced by the statue, the Babylonian kingdom, the Medo-Persian kingdom, Grecian kingdom, the Roman kingdom, all 4 of those had their time. And none of those were just a few days. There were years upon years upon years. And it's after that in Daniel chapter 2 and verse 44 is going to be the everlasting kingdom that is going to be established. God is willing to wait. He's willing to allow things to play out. He's willing to allow his plan to develop. And I think there's so much wisdom that we can gain from just that perspective. Because good things are worth the wait. Mm-hmm. And when we look at this everlasting idea in chapter 4 in verse 3, I'm gonna try to keep up with these on the screen for those who are watching on YouTube or Excel TV with us. In chapter 4 and verse 3, how great are his signs and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation. We can also look at chapter 7. Let me see if I can get over here real quick. At chapter 7 and verse 27, then the sovereignty, the dominion of the greatness of all the kingdoms under the whole heaven will be given to the people of the saints of the highest one. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all the dominions will serve and obey him. We have the same idea in chapter 4 and verse 34 about his everlasting dominion. Chapter 9 and verse 24, his everlasting righteousness. Chapter 12 and verse 2, everlasting life, as well as everlasting contempt. The concept of time here, I think, is extremely important because God's vision for the future, his plan for freedom of sin and salvation and a kingdom of which we can be a part of that will last forever, is something that God has developed throughout a lot of years and is allowed to play out. And, if we're making practical application to that, maybe the application is essentially this, that sometimes whenever we get ideas or we want things to happen, we want it to happen now. And I'm sure that God wanted it to happen now, but he was willing to wait, and he put things in play. And I know one of the most boring things to read through in our Bibles is a genealogy. So when we come to Matthew chapter 1 or Luke chapter 3, so-and-so begot so-and-so, and so-and-so begot so-and-so, and it's like, okay, oh my goodness, this is enough. But what I think that we see as an underlying component of that is the time perspective that God planned Jesus to come, and he had planned an eternal kingdom to be established, and there were things that he was doing in order for that to happen. And so when you really begin to look under, in the meaning of these things, I think those are, just some things that we can take that, in my opinion, are an extreme, faith-building blessing to know the everlasting kingdom is something that God took his time to create, and there will never be, I think as Tyler said, there will never be a kingdom that will ever overcome that one, while there was for Rome, while there was for Persia, while there was for Greece, while, the kingdom of Christ will not.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I had, his dominion being an everlasting dominion, is one of the things that I had written down. A couple others that I think are key to looking through here, and I had Tyler written down the same key verses you did, but I also had chapter 4 and verse 17, which basically says the same thing as well. But one of the things I think is cool that you see repeated is the idea that it's God that reveals the mysteries. You've got these visions that depending on your translation, the magicians or the wise men or whatever could not figure out, but Daniel could, and the only reason Daniel could was because it was revealed to him by God.
Yeah.
You've got the idea of set up is over and over throughout Daniel. You've got this thing, the king set up this, or the king set up this, or whatever, and God's setting up some things too, and there's a contrast between what God sets up and what the kings set up. Decree or writing or edict, you see that a lot in Daniel.
Yeah.
And there's a few Hebrew words behind that, but you've got all of the kings, the rulers that are making these edicts or these decrees. And then there's some things that God decrees. And there's a contrast between those two things. And obviously God's is the one we need to listen to, because that's what we're going to be judged by at the last. You've got all peoples, nations, and languages repeated over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And that's a phrase that is going to be used in Revelation quite a bit as well, which there's a connection back and forth between this. And, they thought of the Babylonian and the Persian and the Greek and the Roman empires as being a worldwide empire. But yet there's only one kingdom that's going to rule over every people, nation, and language, and that's the Lord's. And you see that in Daniel 4:17 and 2:20 through 22 as well. Save and deliver, especially in chapters 3 and 6, you're going to see that emphasized, that it's God who can do that. You also see an emphasis on humility. And if you walk in pride in chapter 4 and 5, you'll see that with Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar, that both of them, Nebuchadnezzar recognizes at the end of chapter 4 that God humbled him because he was too proud. You look earlier in the chapter, and Nebuchadnezzar's talking about, look what I have done in my kingdom, and then ultimately Belshazzar has to be reminded, you're just like your daddy, and God's going to humble you also. So you've got this chapters 1, 3, and 6 of the challenge with the food. As we think of them, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, for some reason we remember Daniel's Hebrew name, and we remember they're given by the Babylonian name. I don't know. I guess it's because if you're Daniel and you're writing the book, you can call yourself whatever you want to. I don't know. But anyway, they have the challenge there. And then in chapter 6, Daniel with the lion's den. And all of those have a moral challenge. There's a choice to follow God, and then God blesses that faithfulness. And you think about that message for these people that are in captivity, and the message for us is the same. You got chapters 4 and 5 that has, these rulers that you think are in total control, and how God humbles them. What a message for those in captivity and coming out of captivity that would be. And then you've got all of these visions that really start, as y'all have talked about, the statue one in chapter 2. And then you've got, that weird beast in chapter 4 or whatever. And then chapter 7 is going to kind of the 4 beasts align with those kingdoms, and you've got chapter 4's vision is really an expansion of the head of gold in the first beast, and letting us know when he says that's you, King Babylon, then we can start counting kingdoms forward, and that's how we get, Persia, Greece, and Rome. But then similarly in chapter 8, you got the fall of Persia and the rise of Greece. And then in chapter 10 and 11, you get this detailed vision of the Greek Empire and Alexander the Great and all that. And then chapter 12 vision and this great tribulation of the time of the Roman Empire. And it talks about, he uses this phrase, time, times, and half a time, which, you go over into Revelation, and John's talking about that as well, that this Roman Empire is going to cause this great tribulation or persecution that's going to come on the church, and it's going to last. In Revelation, he says a couple of things, time, times, and half a times, or 42 months, or 3.5 years, or 1,260 days, or whatever it is, but it's all time times half a time. And so all of it says to us that whatever kingdom or empire you're living under, that's not the Savior. If you're living under the Persians and here comes the Greeks, all right, the Greeks is going to bring in some good things, but they weren't the Savior. And then you're living under the Greeks and the Romans come in, you think, all right, here come the Romans. And all the way up to modern time, every election, this is the one that's going to save us, but that's not what's supposed to be for eternity. The focusing on God and trusting in Him and being a part of His kingdom is what's really important, because He's the only one. He's the only one that really is in charge from everlasting to everlasting. He is God.
Yeah.
Well, and I think to kind of touch too on both of those things, and this is something that I've kind of stumbled across new, and this is, hey, everyone who's listening, this is one of my favorite things about studying Bible. Is I have studied Daniel probably more than any other Old Testament book, and I'm still finding stuff. I mean, we decided, hey, let's do a big overview of Daniel. So I pick up Daniel and read it and think, oh, I've taught this overseas. I've taught this to the college class, and I'm still finding stuff. And I've talked to professors who have, studied stuff for their whole life of 60, 70 years, and they're still finding stuff. So let that be an encouragement to your Bible reading. Just because you've read it before doesn't mean that you know everything that it's trying to communicate. But here's something that I've kind of picked up on to both of your guys' points. Looking at the Hebrew word alam or yalama in Daniel, eternity or forever or everlasting. It's found in 13 verses, and it's first found in Daniel chapter 2 and verse 4. It says, "Then the Chaldeans said to the king in Aramaic, 'O king, live forever.'" What I'm seeing here just by reading Daniel, I'd have to do more research on this. Again, this is new to me, and so I would like to dive a little bit deeper into this and flesh it out more. And maybe you guys can do this as well. But this seems like it was a pretty regular greeting to the king for Babylon's sake, and even for other royalties and monarchs in times past. "O king, live forever," or "O queen, live forever," whatever. You have that very generic introductory greeting to someone. You find that's the bulk of alam in Daniel. "O king, live forever. O king, live forever." Daniel would even say, "O king, live forever," in Daniel chapter 6. And then even chapter 6 and verse 6. "These high officials and satraps came by agreement to the king and said to him, 'O king Darius, live forever.'" But in Daniel, how is God using the word forever? There's only one kingdom that's going to live forever. And so this introduction to a king, or this introduction to a royalty, "Oh, king, live forever." How can you live forever? Mm-hmm. The only way is by focusing on God. And the only way is when you're in his kingdom. And so it's interesting to me that these kingdoms like Babylon, Assyria, Greece, listen, they're all gone. You've got Greece still, but not like it used to be. Right. Medo-Persia is gone. Rome has drastically changed from being the world's greatest power to being a vacation spot. You think about, "Oh, king, live forever." That was always on their mind of, I want to live forever. But they missed it. They missed their shot of living forever. And God says, you want to talk about living forever? Here's how you live forever. Mm. It's when you come into my kingdom and stop trying to set up for yourself your kingdom. So I just thought that was interesting when looking at Daniel, this word for alam, everlasting or forever. And I think a lot of us, we want America to last forever. I think it would be super humbling if we became under reign of another world power. We obviously wouldn't like it, but would it detract from our faith in God? I think for a lot of people, God, how could you, we're a Christian nation. How could you allow us to be under? Habakkuk had that same problem. God, you're going to use the Chaldeans? Do you know who they are? They're wicked, they're haughty, they're prideful. You're going to use them? And God reemphasizes the point. If you want eternity, it's in my kingdom.
Well, and you think about that word olam too, it's used of a lot of things in the Old Testament about, the sacrifice in the temple and all of those types of things. Mm-hmm. We think of it as lasting forever, and that's why it's often translated in our English Bibles, but it's basically something that lasts until God says no more.
Yep.
And which points us back to chapter 2, verses 20 through 22, and chapter 4 and verse 17, that God, those kingdoms are going to last until, that wine vat fills up and he gets in and treads out the grapes of wrath. And that's going to be the end of it. And, but the only one that's going to last forever is his kingdom. And, to your point about, that you made it earlier and you made it just then about how, they're put in such a difficult place to where they would have, like we do sometimes when things don't go our way. You read in the Psalms, and there's tons of Psalms written about captivity or while in captivity, and how we're crying by the river, and we're wondering if the Lord has forgotten us, and when, oh when, Lord, will you, and then similarly in Revelation, you read about these martyred saints that are under the throne room of God, and they're saying, how long, O Lord, are you going to allow this to go on? And ultimately, God's will is going to be done. Philippians 2 says that every tongue is going to confess Jesus and every knee is going to bow. Our decision is, are we going to get on the right side of that kingdom in this life, or are we going to be forced to submit to him on the day of judgment?
It's funny you say that. When you think about the contemporaries, the others that were around during the time of Daniel, Jeremiah is one of those contemporaries. And Jeremiah, being one who witnessed the destruction of Jerusalem and sits around, we are so blessed to be able to read some of the things that he said. And it's actually, I'll tell you what, one of my favorite songs to sing actually comes from Lamentations chapter 3, as he's looking on the city that is laying in nothing more than ruin. People are walking by him. They're gnashing their teeth. It's just, if you just read some of this wording here in chapter 2, it says, on the ground in the streets lie young and old, my virgins, and my young men have fallen by the sword. You have slain them in the day of your anger. You have slaughtered, not sparing. You have called as in the day of the appointed feast, my terrors on every side. This is a destroyed city. Completely. But when we think about the faith of not only Daniel, or who we call Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or even the other contemporaries, Ezekiel, Habakkuk, Jeremiah, Zephaniah, think about what Jeremiah says as he looks upon this city in Lamentations chapter 3. He says, remember my affliction and my wandering in the wormwood and bitterness. Surely my soul remembers and is bowed down within me. This I recall to my mind. Therefore I have hope. The Lord's loving kindness indeed never cease, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, the person who seeks him. It is good that he waits silently for the salvation of the Lord. When I think about what Tyler just said, as far as if another ruling power came over the United States or whatever, that's Jeremiah's life.
Mm-hmm.
His faith was extremely strong. I've said it before, and I continue to believe this, and my belief in this grows stronger. Jeremiah is one of the most powerful preachers, I believe, in all of the text because of what he endured. We measure so many preachers by the amount of people they have in their pews or the amount of people that they baptize in a baptistry or wherever, and we say that is success. Jeremiah had none of that. No converts, nothing.
And he's told beforehand that's what it's going to be.
Yeah, and
that's
day,
an encouraging idea.
Yeah. You want me to do what? Every day he continues, and now, you've got to think, as if we're just thinking about he was a man like I'm a man. In some ways, maybe I'm thinking I'm going to prove you wrong. There is going to be some success here because I have drive and I this is the right thing. It doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. And all of a sudden, now not only you have no people, but they're lying in the streets. The city is completely destroyed and everybody's being hauled off to Babylon. What a failure. That's what society says. But again, Jeremiah also knows that God and his kingdom that will come is everlasting. And that's what he can have hope in. And so really just a beautiful time to read about through the eyes and the words of all of the prophets that existed during this time. Definitely not a good time for Israel. I'm not saying that, but to see the faith of each of these individuals and their perspective as they look at life and as they look at the kingdom, as they follow God in their faith, it really is awesome. And, and also you can see God's character in all of this. I actually got this list from a book that I've got. It says God's character throughout the book of Daniel shown as merciful in chapter 9 and verse 9, powerful, chapter 3 and verse 17, provident 4:29 through 31, righteous, chapter 9, verse 7 and 16, true for chapter 4, verse 37, wise, chapter 2, verse 20 through 22, and wrathful, chapter 9 and verse 16. I thought that was really interesting that you could see that many characteristics of God in just one place. And truly awesome. So he can really affect a lot of people. As we said, he's ready and willing to use time for the betterment of his people and to create something that will never be destroyed. Really awesome.
And Tyler, you probably know this. Tyler he talked about how much he studied Daniel. He studied so much, Daniel's almost like his middle name at this point. So, but one of the things we do in studying the Old Testament, we think of like the Old Testament God and the New Testament God. And maybe even now we think about the New Testament God and the 2024 God as being something different. But one of those connections that you should make, going back to where, and maybe this is kind of a good wrap up to, and maybe you're not ready to wrap it up, I don't know, but it would be a good one if you want to segment away. You started off, Tyler, talking about Daniel 2:20, where Daniel says, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belongs wisdom and insight." 21, he changes times and seasons. He moves kings and he sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. Well, then you go to Acts chapter 17, and when Paul's up on Mars Hill and he's preaching to all of these people that there's this, we don't know who this God is, and he's trying to declare who that unknown God is. In verse 26, he says he made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, and he's determined their appointed times and the boundary of their habitation. He's appointed their times and their kingdom. That sounds so much like what Daniel's saying here in Daniel chapter 2. And God's vision for the future, I don't know, who's going to win the election this year. I have no idea. But no matter who wins the election, God knows. The Daniel's vision, we sometimes call it, was not Daniel's vision. Nebuchadnezzar's vision was not Nebuchadnezzar's vision. It's God's vision.
Yeah. And
God has a vision of his will. Whenever we were in Bear Valley, Dave Chamberlain, Tyler will remember this well. Whenever he would get to this point in a lecture, he would lean forward in the podium and he would say, "The plan," and he would emphasize God's got a plan and it's going to be accomplished. There's no stopping it,
Yeah.
And he's the only one that knows the future. He's the only one that knows what is best for us, and learning to trust that. We pray for no persecution. I heard Wayne Jones one time leading a prayer at Bear Valley in our lectureship one time, and he prayed for us to receive the persecution that we needed. I've never heard anybody pray that before. But I the more I've thought on it and studied it, the more I've prayed it. And I hope I would be faithful. I hope I'd be like Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Yeah. But ultimately, he's going to win in the end, so I want to be on his side. That's what Revelation's about. Worship God, because he wins at the end, But that's hard for us in the middle of a political season to grasp. And, I think maybe what we're wanting us to learn today is to be untied from, the things of this life and who's in charge, and realize who really is in charge.
Right. Yeah, those are great thoughts, and definitely a great way to kind of work us over into our last segment. If we're talking about the kingdom that is going to be everlasting, I'll tell you what, those who are listening and of course watching, I am just extremely thankful that God has surrounded me with good people that have blessed me tremendously to grow and to understand and to help me to find my way as I work within the kingdom. And I'll tell you what, I'm thankful for Corey and Tyler, the influence that they have on me, and of course so many others. And there's another guy that we're going to introduce to you right now that really has had a great impact on my life and everything that I have been very blessed to do. He is a huge reason why I am doing what I'm doing, and has just been a great inspiration to me, a great help to me, a mentor to me, one of my great friends in all the world, and his name is Joe Wells. And so, Joe, we're glad to have you on here. Joe is actually a part of a ministry that I think is very, very valuable in the kingdom, and it's called Kaio Publications. Kaio Publications was founded in 2012 as a nonprofit organization, and really had a great had a great desire to help teenagers and their families by making a connection between the Word of God and real life. Their mission is to challenge, to encourage, and inform teens and families, whether as they go through and weather the storms of life, whether they're in the storm or simply at the edge of the forest looking at the path that leads to the unknown. If you're looking for a place that is dedicated to help you, Kaio Publications is it. KP is really a go-to for excellent biblical products. They actually are the publishers of the Finer Ground series. If you remember, just a couple of weeks ago, we did our weekly ministry spotlight on Come Fill Your Cup, and the great ladies over there are the writers of that. You can also find the Bible keywording guides and books by Lori Boyd, like Praying Through It. Definitely an excellent writer. And of course, we've got to throw this in there as a plug that Kaio Publications is also the publisher for the Excel Still More Bible Workshop series books that we do each year for our workshop that is on actually April 24 through 26 of 2025. He'll be publishing our Romans chapters 1 through 8 book. Joe and Aaron have their own podcast, actually, an excellent podcast called The Hey Joe Show. And you can find that on their website at kiopublications.org, as well as over at the good folks at the Light Network. Joe travels the U.S. doing a number of speaking events. He has several different series that he speaks on, a number of books, including a new one that he just put out. I'll let him talk about that here in just a minute. And is doing some great work all over the U.S. talking about teens, families, culture. He's a huge part of the Excel Still More Bible Workshop, the work here. And if you want to check them out, make sure and go to Kaio, that's Kaio, publications.org. Joe, my friend, it's great to have you on here. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. After that introduction, I'm not sure, how I can live up to it, brother. I love you and thank you for everything you said.
Well, man, it looks like you are in a lot better place than the offices that we're in. Where are you at today?
I'm in Hamilton, Alabama at Maywood Christian Camp. This is our week to do the Legacy Family Camp East. We host that as part of our ministry that we do with another family, the Skeltons, and we are preparing to have families join us anywhere from Kentucky down to Florida, the Carolinas, over to Texas. And we actually have a visitor from Oregon this year. He's actually a regular at the camp. But so that's what we're doing, man. On top of everything you just said, we also host the family camp. So that's where we're at. So yeah, I wanted to show you the beauty of where I have to be this week.
You have to be. Look at that.
I
Well, Joe,
I
I'll,
have to be.
I'll tell you, you're also on here with Corey Sawyers and Tyler King. So I know you can't see everybody, but you can definitely hear them and talk to them. But Joe, it's awesome to have you on here because I remember way back in 2012. You know, we've talked about several times on this show that we talk a lot about food. And this is the funny thing about when I remember that me and you were on the phone. I was working. I was going through a drive-through at Burger King, and you said, "Me and Aaron are starting a new publications company called Kyo Publications." And I was doing a lot with the work that was the Family Growth Seminar, and you were starting that, and it has just grown so much. So. Brother, take us, if you would, just on a little journey. Tell us a little bit about, how all that came to be and how it's, where it is right now and kind of your goals. Just talk about Kyo Publications for a little bit and help our listeners to understand a little bit more.
First of all, Corey and Tyler, it's good to be on here with you guys. I can't see you, but I'm sure you're as good looking as ever. So... But I did appreciate your discussion. I got to hear some of your discussion there about the last 10 minutes, and I appreciate the depth and what you're covering and what was said. So thank you for that. But Kyo Publications is, it was founded in 2012. It's hard to believe that we're over 10 years old. But we began this, quite honestly, when I was in full-time work. Our thought was we wanted to continue publishing a teenage magazine that I had begun with another work that I was serving with. And that company was going to do away with the magazine. And, as companies do from time to time, we've got to make business decisions. And anyhow, we weren't done working with that. And we felt that it had more life in it. And so we formed a nonprofit because in order to transfer something from a nonprofit, you need to transfer it to another nonprofit. And so Kyo Publications was born, and it really was born from the standpoint of publishing a Christian teenage magazine that eventually turned into an e-zine. And, that was our start. But the reality was, I think we were a little ahead of the curve back in 2012. That was before a lot of the companies that publish magazines they ceased publishing hard copies and they went more online and things like that. But that opened a door because, just exploring options, it opened a door to publishing books. And so the entities that you mentioned, both Come Fill Your Cup Ministries and the Excel Still More Ministry, along with the Family Growth Seminar, all of that played into how we got to where we are with the company. So as we continue to re-envision and allow God to use us in a way that maybe we hadn't first thought about, doors of opportunity became more and more open and increasingly open. And so Kyo Publications for the longest of time was what I hate to call it a side work, but my local work was really where I needed to put my emphasis. And so I did things as I could. But in 2019, that's when we really stepped into this with both feet. And that was, we had made a decision that, God can do with this what he wants to do with it. And if he wants it to succeed, then it's going to succeed. And if he didn't, that would be okay too. We would serve him in any way that we could. And so in 2019, we jumped in full time into seminar work. And when I say we, I mean my wife. She's also a co-founder of this, Aaron. Anyhow, we jumped into it with both feet. And so from that moment on, it's been 5 years ago, with the help of some great brethren across the country, we've been able to keep doing this, and that's freed us up to publish many different works. And, and that's been a blessing. So Kyo itself has offerings from anything from fully illustrated children's books to children's coloring books, all the way up to what I would say the Excel Still More work, which is probably no, well, it's our most in-depth book that we publish because it deals a lot with the original languages and things along those lines. And so you think about everything that falls in between that with ladies studies, men's studies, books for teenagers, books on for marriage, books for dealing with grief and anxiety. We have a Bible keywording guide series that we're doing. Rob Sinclair did a great job if you like Bible marking. And so we actually were able to bring over authors like Lori Boyd into the Kyle Publications family. And, you know, it's just been really neat to see what God has done over the last, 12 years now or 11 and a half years with something that we just said, hey, we don't want a teenage magazine to stop. And eventually, what we did in publishing books, we thought there's a lot of what we would call smaller authors, smaller name authors that may not get a look from at that time that were larger authors and our publishing companies, rather. And so we really kind of focused on some of those authors that were not as well known, maybe had not had books published. And that just has been such a huge blessing to realize that, you know, there are a lot of people that have a lot of neat things to say and a lot of good knowledge to bring to the table when it comes to writing books. So where we stand today, I couldn't even tell you. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Kaio has close to 40 books, I think, that we offer in some way, and that's not including the electronic copies. Um, the newest book that you mentioned is called Determine, which I appreciate the plug on your show. Determine is a book for men. You know, my ministry, the things that I'm writing, I speak a lot more at men's days, and writing for men and families has become more of a passion of mine. I guess it's as I've aged, maybe as my children have aged as well. But yeah, Determined, it's a book for men. It draws off of the ESM study, as a matter of fact. And so what I do is when we write our ESM material, I'll take what I've done in that, and I will add discussion questions. I might beef it up a bit, make it more specific to men. And that allows an opportunity if a guy's not going to get the ESM work, maybe it's too intimidating, or maybe that's just not what they do, then the other book, you know, like Determined, does a great job with that, of filling that gap, plugging that hole, you know, for some guys. So I don't know, that's a lot, but basically at the end of the day, now we're full time in this, and it's really neat because I get to do things like our podcast with called the Hey Joe Show, Legacy Family Camp East, publishing books, traveling, doing seminar work, and I don't know, man. I get to interact with guys like y'all. So that's a lot. I said a lot, but we're going to keep serving God. And if he continues to bless us, then we're going to continue in our work here.
Well, Joe, while you've been talking, I've been showing your website to those who will be watching this on either YouTube or Excel TV, and been showing them the different works that are on here. Remember, this is KAIOpublications.org. KAIO publications.org. It is a great website, a lot of great things on here, and just a fantastic work that has been going on. It's interesting that you brought up back in 2019. That is when Excel Still More began, was in 2019. Through a conversation that me and you had as well. So
Yeah.
it's funny how connected we have been. And like I said, Joe has been just a great mentor and friend of myself, and so many, doing just an excellent job. Joe, I was looking on here. Have you already put your new book on the website yet, or are you still waiting to get that up there?
I have not, and it's on purpose. Little strategy for those who do care to, you know, to hear it. But Amazon is where I'm pushing everybody to. And the only reason I am is because when you launch a book, it's first put it up on Amazon, it's counted as a new release. And if you push people to Amazon and they buy it off Amazon, then it moves up in the rankings. And if it moves up in the rankings, then you're exposed to an audience that you might not would have been exposed to otherwise. You know, people that might be searching for men's books from a Christian perspective, on Amazon's top 100 new release or something like that. So I do that for a little bit just to honestly reach an audience that I otherwise would not reach. But I will be putting that book up on our website, and of course, I would encourage anybody either go to Amazon, that would be preferred, or after this week, it'll actually be up. I actually have hard copies here at the camp with me, but I wanted the camp to be the first place that I made those hard copies available to people. So kind of as a, hey, come to Legacy Family Camp East, and oh, by the way, this is the first place you can get the hard copy of the book Determined.
Sure. You are looks like you're pretty booked up. You've got a number of different seminars that you do, including looks like one called Surrender, Complete, Game Plan, Surviving, Sin to Salvation. Joe, could you talk just for a minute about, kind of your main focus for some of those some of your seminars that you do? I know you deal a lot with culture, family, teens, and things of that nature. What is your primary focus for some of the stuff that you're doing, and maybe some things that you're focusing on maybe for the future?
Yeah, the seminars that I do, as you mentioned, there's one on there called Learn to Discern. I think that is on there. I'm trying to remember. I'm not looking at the website, but Learn to Discern is the cultural seminar that I do. And part of the reason I even deal with cultural things, in 2008, I ended up working with a company that allowed me a full-time opportunity to what I call culture watch and study culture. And there are a lot of good brothers who are interested in culture and keep up with culture. So it's not that I'm just this guru. It's just that I've been watching it a while too. But here's kind of the basis of the way I approach culture. I don't want to deal with culture just because, we're talking about, how difficult it is or how bad it is. And sometimes when you deal with cultural studies, it always is, look how bad things are. Look how far they've changed, how far we've gotten away from God. But I started doing the seminar work because I wanted to present an answer to that from a biblical worldview, not just a complaint about how much things had changed. And so my seminar work started there, and it was really initially dealing with teenagers who attend our Bible classes on Sunday mornings, and they go to our Bible bowls, and they can get 98% to 100% right on those Bible bowl questions, and they never miss a class. But there was a great disconnect between Friday night and Sunday morning, between what they intellectually knew and how they were living out amongst their peers. And that hasn't changed amongst our kids. And so I wanted to tackle some very difficult, very sensitive subjects like sexual identity, illegal immigration, role of government, abortion. But I also wanted to tackle other things that would be pertinent to life, such as worldview and how to handle money and marriage and family and various, belief systems regarding like humanism or different philosophies that oftentimes derail people. So that's what that seminar is. The other seminars you see there, the Complete Seminar, the Surrender Seminar, those are ones that I do for men. I speak at men's events. And so there's another one called Forged that I do. And next weekend, I'll be in Missouri speaking to a congregation there. And I will be delivering the seminar series Determined on the new book, the material from ESM and what I've done with it. And so do that. I have family seminars. I'm a big believer in calling families to be what God would have them to be. And that's not just calling men to live according to God's will. It's also talking to women and talking to children and grandparents and the importance of the family and the faithfulness of a young person. And so I do with that. And then Aaron and I also have a marriage seminar that we do. We have not figured it all out, but I guess we've been married long enough to figure out some things not to do and maybe a few pointers that might help some people. So, that's what we get to do, man. So those are some of the seminars. And of course, if your audience continues to check out kyopublications.org, there'll be new seminars that are added to that speaking page and schedules that are updated and things along those lines.
That's man, that's really good stuff. Y'all have done just such a great job with this, and Really appreciate everything you do, Tyler. This would be great to have him to reference some of his material for you deal with a lot of teens and then those going into college. Definitely great material to look into, and Corey, you as well, and anybody who's listening. This is just, they really put out great material, and we're thankful to partner with them at Excel Still More. Joe and Aaron are great friends, and just really appreciate them. Corey, Tyler, do y'all have anything you'd like to add or ask Joe before we let him off of here? It looks like he's got plenty to do getting ready for Legacy Family Camp.
That's a great camp too, by the way. Melody and I got to go down there with the boys a few years ago, and we've had Joe come and speak in our Wednesday night summer series last year, I think maybe it was. Took him, Tyler, to Blake's and fed him some good barbecue there, and but
took care
he's
of
a
me.
dear friend. Yeah, he's a dear friend too. I just got back from a place that I know is near and dear to y'all's heart, from Linder Road in Meridian at the lectureship up
Yes.
there. And we got to actually, Joe and I be together as speakers there a few years ago. And his anniversary, we got to go, Melody and I went out to eat with them on their anniversary supper. So
We did, double date.
They've honored us in a lot of ways like that. So we appreciate them and love them very much.
Love you, brother.
Well, Joe, I want to ask if you've talked to Denny lately. I know he's got his commentary on 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus, and my copy. I don't know what it is about those books, if they're just so
They come
old,
apart.
but man, as soon as you open it, I mean, not even cracking the spine, but just
Yeah.
opening up the front page, it's like the glue is just so hard it falls apart. And I've been begging
Nice.
Denny, please go to a publisher and get a rerun of these things.
Amen.
He's reached,
Next time-
he's reached out, or I say reached out. I shouldn't say that. He mentioned a new one that he's working on.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I don't know, I can't remember off the top of my head what it is on, but he did say he would like to talk with me about it. So we'll see if he'll bring him over to us. But, I don't know, Denny's, and I love Denny, but, Denny's old school, man. He likes what he likes.
yeah. Well,
And
I've
I
been
love
begging
him.
for
I love
years.
him. No, seriously, I would love to have Denny, but I'm glad to hear that his books have been a blessing to you. Seriously, because a lot of his stuff has been a great blessing to me and my ministry as well. And now I'm having the opportunity to introduce it to my son, who's 21, and my daughter, who's 19, as they are going through Freed-Hardeman University. So, yeah, man, I would love to. Hey, if you have Denny's ear, say, hey, I heard Joe on a podcast the other day, and he said, you're old school, and it's time for you to come over to Coyote.
It's time to change.
Yes.
I am texting him right now, actually.
Hey,
So.
Good.
Now-
Thank you.
Now,
Well-
he's going to take this one way, but earlier this year after the workshop, we did our very first filming of a show that we do for Excel TV called The Round Table. And after the round table, Joe and I and several other guys got together and we surrounded ourselves in a circle, and we took a couple pictures that if we're feeling good, we may throw out there. He wanted us to burn it, but it's a great picture of us and
Hey.
Denny. I'll have to show you guys, and for everybody
man.
else, maybe we'll.
It's pretty
post it at
special,
some-
actually.
It's very
There
special.
are families that pay a lot of money to go to a place to see the magic that we have seen regarding Denny. So that's what I'm going to say there. And you can maybe, if you're Garrett, I'll leave that one up to you, man. I haven't
Oh.
shown people that publicly yet.
Oh, I've pulled it out a couple of times to some
Nice.
specific people, but one
Yeah.
of my
Well,
favorite pictures in all the world of Denny Petrillo.
Well, listen, I want to, for the record, Tyler and I have degrees from Bear Valley that he could revoke. So we have nothing to do with whatever it is they're talking about. So I
Yeah.
just want to put that on the
I
record.
hear you. I hear
No, I'm
Yeah.
bringing y'all down with me. If it's
you. Oh, that's funny.
Oh man, well, Joe, brother, it's so good to see you and be able to talk to you for a little bit, and definitely hope you guys have a great weekend or week, I guess, out there in Alabama at Legacy Family Camp East. I know that y'all do a great job out there.
Thank you, Garrett. I appreciate y'all letting me come on. Corey and Tyler, good to visit with you for a little bit. Appreciate y'all's good work.
Thank you,
You
sir.
too. Love you, brother.
If you guys are looking for a great place to go, make sure if you're looking for another good podcast, we definitely promote everything that Joe does. The Hey Joe Show just did an excellent series on pornography. They've done a number of others that will really bless you and help you. Check out all the books that they've got publishing and everything that they do. Remember, just go to kiopublications.org. That's KAIO publications.org. Joe, my friend, it's good to talk to you, and we will see you hopefully soon.
I look forward to it. Love you guys. Have a great one.
See you, brother.
Bye.
Well, guys, man, it's been a good show. A lot of things that we've discussed. I know we've talked about Daniel and the everlasting things and the eternal kingdom, and we've talked about contemporaries and ministries, and a lot of great work that was going on in the days of Daniel, and of course with Joe and Aaron at Kio Publications. And I know it's a lot of great stuff going on where you guys are. So as we kind of close this out, do we have any closing thoughts or things that we want to leave our audience from Daniel itself, or just in general, before we kind of begin to close out season 1, episode 5?
Well, one thing I want to say, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
One thing I want to say, because he won't say it, is if you're looking for a more in-depth study of the book of Daniel, I know Tyler taught it when we were locked down in 2020 on the Bear Valley Church of Christ website. Maybe I sent a link to y'all with that. Maybe we can get that put on our show notes or something.
We'll
but
put it in, yes.
Everything Tyler does is quality, and if you know Tyler, you know that about him, and he takes very seriously when he studies and teaches God's word. So I know I enjoyed and learned a lot from that study, and I know you will too if you'll take the time to check it out.
Well, I appreciate that, Corey. I thought we were supposed to talk about something that was spiritual and leave everyone on a good note.
That is spiritual. That is.
Well, I was going to say, now you're making me look like the bad guy, but I appreciate that, and just the love and encouragement that you're always showing. Man, when I think about Daniel, I think one of the biggest encouragements that I get from it is when I can't find peace in this world, or when I can't find comfort in this world, I need to stop and reflect on the peace that God has given me.
Amen.
Daniel was in such a difficult time, and he's one that I can't wait for. There are a number of people who I am just going to make a beeline toward as soon as we get through those gates, and family and friends are on that list. But while I'm hugging maybe my grandparents, I'll probably be looking over their shoulder trying to find Daniel and making over to him. But there are going to be times where it's tough, and this world will not be giving you peace or comfort. But God has given you something that can't be taken away from you. He's given you assurance of salvation. He's given you his promise, and God is definitely one who keeps his promises. And so the encouragement that I see from Daniel is, even when things don't go our way or don't go a way that we thought it would, we still have this everlasting kingdom that we're part of, and eternal life that we can look forward to.
Yeah, there's a great connection, I think, between a lot of these men that we've talked about today and Jesus. You can see Jesus all throughout Daniel. You know, he's the stone. He's what brings the kingdom. There's a lot of things, a lot of connections there. But one thing I think that we can connect very clearly with Daniel and Jesus is his prayer life. Daniel was a man of prayer. Jesus was a man of prayer. And their relationship to God was extremely important. And equally for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, their relationship with God was extremely important. How else would they have said, "You do whatever you want to us. We will not bow down. We're not going to do what you ask." Our prayer life is so important. It will get us through every single part of our life, whether it's great or whether it's really bad, whether we're extremely happy or extremely sad, it will get us through. And Daniel was definitely a man of prayer. And here's the beauty of it. I think that Daniel found so much strength in his ability to communicate with God. And Jesus did as well, having that connection, being able to pray. That's something I think that we all need to apply to our lives as we go throughout life, is that our strength comes from the Lord. And if we will pray to Him, in the morning, in the noontime, in the evening, it doesn't have to be an official prayer, right? It doesn't have to be put your hands this way and officially say, "Dear Lord," or even "Amen." But being able to talk to the Lord anytime you can is really powerful, and we can all be strengthened from our prayer life. Any more closing thoughts, guys? Or are we ready to close down Season 1, Episode 5? This is a benchmark, by the way. Benchmark number 1 was 1 episode. Benchmark number 2 is 5 episodes. So we have made it. We have not been canceled, and people are still listening to us. So that's good.
For now.
For now. Yeah. Just wait a minute.
We may get on some of the barbecue smoking meat websites if we keep on. So
hey, that would be great. And don't forget, remember, you've got to tell us how that breakfast comes out for next week. We'll have good talk about smoking meat breakfast. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us on Season 1, Episode 5 of the Untied Podcast. I want to remind you that each episode will drop every Thursday at noon. You can tune in right here on whatever audio version of this you're listening to, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean. We're on all of those places, also including YouTube. You can check out or listen to our podcast that way. If you'd like to view it, be sure to check out our YouTube channel, Excel Still More, or you can go to Excel TV and subscribe there and tune in and watch every episode there. We're trying to put all of these out so that they may be a benefit to you in any way possible. We know that some people like to listen, some people like to watch, and we want to provide those for you. So thank you for joining us today. As usual, we will put all of the notes of the show in the show notes, and we're also going to tag Tyler there and the class that he did on Daniel. We may even post a couple of things more. If there's ever any questions or anything that you would like to submit to us, we would love to have those, study them and talk about them and answer them. And leave us a note. Tell us what you think of the podcast. If there's something we could improve on. If there's something you want us to keep doing or add, we would love to hear from you no matter where you're listening or watching from, so that we can make this podcast the best that we can. Thank you so much for joining us. We love being able to hop on here. I know that I grow and am very blessed and encouraged every week to talk to these two guys and to see talk to other people that we're bringing in for our weekly ministry spotlights. They're a great blessing. So make sure to please like this, share it, follow it, subscribe, all that kind of stuff to help us get the word out about the Untied Podcast. And until next week at noon, we hope that you will continue to be blessed. We hope you'll grow in your prayer life. We hope that you'll read through Daniel, grow in your study and knowledge of this wonderful book, and how it will help you and bless you in your life. And until next time, stay untied.